going to go ahead and introduce ourselves so you can see who we are, where we come from, and you can get to know us a little bit more. So I am Liz Barajas Gonzalez, and I just want to say coordinator. I don't even know what I coordinate anymore. I am the coordinator of SEL, MTSS, PBIS, whatever they throw at me. If they pay me for it, I'll coordinate it. So I am a coordinator for Bakersfield City School District, which is located here in Central California. We are one of the biggest non-unified school districts in the state. So we have a lot of resources that we've had to develop, especially now virtually. So we're going to be talking about that. So we have about 1,600 teachers, about 30,000 kids. And we have been doing MTSS for quite some time now. I want to say maybe the past 5 years. We kind of went from the MPS, PBIS model more into the MTSS. So everything from social emotional learning, professional development trainings, and really just piloting programs. We've been piloting SEL programs since the beginning. I want to say since 2005. I actually started off as a teacher. I was a special ed teacher for kids who had an emotional disturbance. And I was using Second Step back in '05 with the VHS tapes. Totally old school, but I had the VHS tapes. And nobody really wanted to do social emotional learning at that time. And I didn't really know what it was. It didn't really have a name, but I wanted to give my kids skills because I knew that's why a lot of them were in my program. It was a satellite campus for kids who couldn't, make it on a regular campus. So they would come to my campus. And I actually would go from classroom to classroom with my little cart and my VHS tapes. And I was begging teachers to let me go into the classrooms and do, Second Step and social skills. So, forward to 2000, 2021, this was back in '05. And it took me almost 15 years to even implement this into our system. So now our teachers do, social emotional learning. We have a program, not that you need a program to do SEL. So we'll be talking about that, but it's my passion. It's really my passion, and I could do it for free. But that's where I come from. I was a teacher, a behavior specialist, a school administrator, and now I'm a district administrator. And anything SEL, self-care, I mean, that's pretty much my passion. So we have two other amazing presenters. So Otzi, and then we'll go with Therese.
Awesome, thank you. So my name is Aussie Sanchez. I'm an education consultant with CLS, or Collaborative Learning Solutions. My history is more in mental health. So more of my history has been doing therapy in schools, in homes, in private practice, all over the place, but also doing behavioral therapy. And my favorite students were always the most challenging ones, the ones that really were acting out, or the ones that were really withdrawn. So I did kind of the slew of what you can do as a therapist, and then decided I missed the schools too much and I wanted to be back. So now being able to be with all of you, working with people in education, really is an honor for me to be able to do this work. So thank you for allowing me to be here.
Thank you, Otzi. Hello, everyone. So all of you who are showing us your wonderful faces, that's always good and encouraging to not have to talk to black screens. My name is Therese. I'm super excited to be with you all today. I am also an educational consultant with CLS, and this is my 16th year in the field. Similar to Aussie, I have been in many different arenas. I'm a licensed therapist. I'm also a licensed clinical social worker. So my specialty is in clinical social work. I have my credential in school social work. So I worked in schools. I've also worked in community settings, particularly residential treatment settings for kids with pretty severe behavioral and emotional concerns. I've had my own private practice. I am the executive director of the Empowerment Center, which is a nonprofit organization that I also started for youth and families. I have worked in wraparound services. So I've done the in-home behavior management, in-home therapy, all that fun stuff, which is probably very close to my favorite because I love really being able to get to see students and kids in their own home environment and to provide those effective interventions. I began to provide training and consultation more at the district level and really just realized the only thing that I love better than being with kids is training and equipping people who are with kids. So this right here is my happy space to be with educators and to come up with strategies and talk about what works, how we do what's best for kids. So I'm happy to be here. Thank you guys for joining us.
Awesome. So we are going to start a quick little activity. What I want to mention in this activity is when we talk about building community, which is the topic for today, it's also about building community with our staff, not just with our kids. So think of all of the amazing all about me activities, get to know me activities that we have with kids. You can do this with your staff as well. So one thing that I do when I'm training my behavior intervention specialists, we actually have one behaviorist for each school site, and we meet quarterly for meetings and monthly and then bi-weekly. So I have an all about me poster, a virtual poster, just like teachers do. And I choose 4 behavior specialists that can tell us all about themselves so we can all get to know each other, where they were raised, how many kids they have, their pets' names. We do the I love all my peeps activity with our kids. And I thought, why not do that with our staff as well? So now we start our staff meetings with an activity that you're going to experience right now in a couple of seconds. So all of those all about me activities, great activities for kids, they also work with adults. So just kind of keep that in mind. And I believe, Otzi, you're going to take it away on this one.
Yeah, actually, Teresa's going to help me on it, but I am going to get this started for us. So some of you might be familiar with the I Love My Peeps activity. If you've done it before in person, it looks kind of like musical chairs. You would set up everybody in a circle, and there's always one person that's the person that does not have a seat, right? The person that's standing. So that person would throw out a statement. It could be something really simple like, I love my peeps that are wearing black today. And everybody that's wearing black would have to get up and find another seat. And then whoever's left standing would have to put out the next statement. So virtually, because we obviously can't do it in the same way, what we'll ask you guys to do is turn your screens off. And then we'll put the statements out there. And then if it refers to you, you would turn your screen back on. Okay, so wow, you guys are already getting it. Good job. So everybody will turn our screens off. And let's see. What we might do for today is we'll just maybe myself and Therese will put the statements out just so that nobody feels like they're being put on the spot. And it'll allow us to put some lower to some higher leverage questions in there. So the first one, just going along with our initial theme, is I love my peeps who love tacos. Wow.
Look at all those faces.
Look at all those taco people. All right.
All right.
Okay.
Next is I
Okay.
love my peeps who have at least one pet. I love my peeps who have at least one pet.
Wow, lots of pet people. Oh, except Therese.
I don't have any and don't plan on having any.
Well, you have kids, so.
Tomato, tomato.
Right. Okay. All right. Cameras off. I love my peeps who can't wait to travel again. Yeah. Emily's nodding. Yeah, for sure. This has definitely been a drag.
Hold on 1 second. Aussie Marion made a good point. She said maybe we should stop sharing so everybody can see the full screen of everybody's faces with the screens coming on.
That's right. I forgot about that.
Thank you for calling that out.
Perfect.
Beautiful.
Thank you, Marion. Hopefully I'm saying your name right.
Yep, you are. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Cameras off. Therese, you want to put in the next one?
Okay. I love my peeps who enjoy watching Netflix.
It's like every day.
Everybody's camera is going to be on, right?
Yeah.
All right.
All right. Let's do a couple more. Okay. Cameras off. And the next one is I love my peeps who have experienced some kind of loss during COVID.
Well, we all have, right? Yeah.
Thank you for your vulnerability and honesty on this one.
And it doesn't have to be like grief as in the loss of a loved one, but just a loss of life, a loss of routine, loss of income, right? Any type of loss. We've all experienced a lot of that. Okay, this is the last one. I love my peeps who are feeling a little bit overwhelmed with the transition back to campus learning. Yeah, it
A
is.
little bit or a lot, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
And that's a good place for us to end because as you guys can see, many of us can relate to that idea of feeling overwhelmed with the return and hybrid learning or whatever that return looks like for your district. But hopefully, after we end today, you all feel just a little bit more prepared with a couple more tools in your tool belt to help ease some of that feeling of overwhelm.
Yeah, so thank you everyone for playing. And when you're playing this with your staff, whoever is the last person who, well, it could either be the last person who turned their camera on, or whoever, was the last person to go can choose another person to go. And then you just kind of switch off. So everybody kind of has a turn and we can all kind of get to learn a little bit about each other. So thank you, Otzi and Therese, for doing that. And now we're going to do a quick little share out.
Yeah. So given that activity, was there any of the statements that stood out most? Yes, Erin?
For me, it was the like, what have you lost or have you experienced loss during COVID? That stood out to me because, to be honest, I've gained a lot during COVID. I started a relationship. I got a new job at a location that I really like. I moved out of my parents' house. I got a cat. So that got kind of just, I noticed that where I was like, oh, I've been able to really kind of focus on what I've gained during this time.
That's awesome. Thank you for highlighting that. Yeah, because it hasn't been all bad, right? There's definitely a feeling of overwhelm because we went through one big change, having to go into remote learning, and now we're going through another big change, having to go back. But a lot of positive has happened. And this is kind of a nice forum to be able to get to some of that information with our students, I think. Because when we're doing something like I Love My Peeps, you don't necessarily have to verbalize anything. You can just, and even if we are like in a room where we can't do musical chairs, let's say, we could always have students just raise their hands or stand up where they are, or there's so many different things we can do in order to get everybody engaged. And the same with staff too, or colleagues or adults. We can do the same thing. We're getting to information that connects us without really having to be vulnerable and kind of out there with it. But yeah, great. Thank you, Erin. Were there any other thoughts? All right, well, let's move on to the next one. What are your concerns related to the students' return to school? Anybody have thoughts on that one?
Hi, I
Ask
have
it-
thought.
Go ahead.
I'm very concerned about their emotional well-being, which is why I signed up for this. I feel like students have had the trauma of our summer of, Black Lives Matter, and then we had COVID occur. And I work at a school where most of our students are, part of the minoritized groups. So I'm very concerned that they've been, affected more than the general population when it comes to COVID and stuff like that.
Right. Which definitely speaks to the third question too. So thank you so much, Catherine, for calling that out. And I think that's why the majority of us are here, right? There is concern, not only about where we're coming from, but also our students. There's so many different potential traumas that have occurred over the past year that there really is, students are coming back with a certain impact. And maybe there's been some positive things that have happened for them. Maybe they got to spend more time with family, but maybe there has been more negative as well. Maybe there were other things going on in the home that we're not necessarily going to know about. So there is definitely a need to be addressing that social emotional piece, that trauma piece. So it really is great that you guys are all here, because we are going to talk a lot about how to address that just in our regular everyday routines. We're not trying to add any more to anybody's plates, but just really finding ways to just kind of interweave throughout the day. So thank you so much again for sharing. Was there anybody else that wanted to address those last two questions? All right, looks like we have a lot of listeners today.
I'll just say real quick, I think just kind of building on what Catherine was saying, I think the other thing that's just recently happened is the George Floyd trial is starting. And so I think there's concerns about the very real potential for emotional reactions to that trial as it unfolds from day to day, and the news feeds that come out around what's going on, even with jury selection and so forth. So I think that's also a concern.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for that, Dean. Yeah, there's definitely, there's a lot out there that is going to be impacting people, and not just our students, us as well, right? So we really do have to just be mindful about how is this impacting me? How might it also be impacting my students? Great. Thank you so much, everyone.
And we're hoping, if I could add, I know Aussie's got this next slide. The purpose of today is to help build that community with a lot of the activities that we'll be sharing, because as an SEL coordinator, I get a lot of emails and recommendations and requests from different districts saying, hey, what are you guys doing for SEL? What are you doing for this? SEL programs don't build community. People do that. And we're hoping that some of these activities can help you with that, because even if you have the best SEL program or whatever you have, it's not going to be as effective if you don't have community. You can go deep into those high level questions if your kids don't know each other and they don't like each other or they don't respect their teachers. So we're hoping that today we'll give you some of those resources where anybody can build community in those classrooms. So we're going to talk a little bit about mental health signs, and then we're going to lead into the resources.
And so we are going to share. We're not going to spend an extended amount of time here, because I know you all have heard some of this, but it's important for us to really, as a group, just really recognize the impact that COVID has had. And as I speak about this, I want us all to keep in mind that this is not just about students. This is very much applicable to us as adults, right? And how we have been impacted. Someone shared in the chat when we're talking about what are we concerned about as it relates to students returning to campus. And someone shared, I'm just concerned about students coming back for 2 months. That in and of itself is a transition, right? We've been out for a year now, and then we're going to come back to school, and now we have to come back to school for 2 months, and we're coming back in such a different way. It's almost like students have to relearn how to be a student, how to be in school. We have to relearn what our campus expectations are, and by the time we get a real rhythm or flow going, I think a lot of us feel like then it'll be summer, and then we have to kind of start all over again. So there are definitely a lot of variables to consider. And as we go into this is just the tail end of COVID as far as the impact goes. But we're seeing a lot of increase in depression, particularly our high schoolers reporting feeling depressed. And those reports of depressive feelings are coming out as self-harm and increased reports around suicidal ideation. And we don't, the statistics and the data is really still being gathered as it relates to what the increase has looked like with the number of deaths that have happened as a result of students who have died by suicide. But we know that number has increased. I'm really looking forward to digging into that data and really seeing, as we get further into the school year next year, what that impact has really looked like. But I think as we go into this hybrid learning, as we go into next year, understanding that our students and our staff, our colleagues, that a lot of us are carrying an increased sense of depression, is something that's going to be huge for us to remember, and understanding that specifically things like self-harm, or just really thinking about wanting to take your own life, those particular elements, and those are not the only elements of depression, but those particular elements have definitely been on the increase because we have been quarantined. We are lacking that self-touch, that physical stimulation that we need, that social stimulation. All of those things has impacted us as the educators, as the adults, and it's very much has impacted our students. We're seeing an increase in anxiety. A lot of our students were anxious before schools closed, right? We had our small groups, we had our interventions, we had our referral systems and our supports and our school counselors and things like that, really supporting the issues of anxiety. So really understanding that now that we have been quarantined and there's going to be these pieces in place where students can interact with each other the way that they have before, that anxiety is going to increase. Am I going to get COVID? Is it safe for me to be at school? Are students safe? Again, talking about adults, we're concerned about the students coming to us. Some people have compromised immune systems, but you feel like I have to go back to work. There's so many anxiety producing situations within our environment right now, but just realizing we've seen the increase in anxiety as well. We're also hearing more reports of post-traumatic stress disorder. Now, students are not walking around saying, I have PTSD. How that's coming out is this, sometimes it's coming out in an irrational fear of going out in public, which typically would have been considered irrational, but how irrational is it really right now, considering what we've been dealing with over these last 12 months? The PTSD symptoms coming out really is that increased stress, that what we call hypervigilance, okay, where again, you might relate to this, or even for our students, that idea that we're very sensitive to things that we may not have been sensitive to before. And we're having a increased response in a way that, again, maybe we didn't before prior to COVID. So where I may have been okay dealing with some sense of bullying or wondering if my teacher likes me, or coming to work and I'm having stress with a colleague, the sense of PTSD and the things that we've experienced over the last year now says that I'm having, again, an increased sense of anxiety and stress and fear, and almost feel incapable of being in those types of environments again. And then the social anxiety and phobias that used to be pre-COVID, something that we dealt with that was more uncommon. And we're going to see an increase in that as we come back again on campus, and as we come back completely next fall. We're going to see many more students who weren't experiencing social anxiety, not wanting to be physically close to, or even emotionally vulnerable and close to other students. So that sense of having just that social anxiety and things like that, we're also going to be seeing that as well. So again, these are just some of the things for us to look for. And then the question that we really want to address is, what do we do about it? What are some actions that we can take? What are some things that we can do? If you can back up one slide, please, Liz. I'm going to cover really quickly just some of the behaviors that we might see. And again, we've heard about this, but we really want to validate it. We're going to see an increase in irritability from some students, right? They are not responding to us respectfully. They are not engaging in conversation. They may seem to be set off at the slightest thing, that irritability or that fear of interacting, fear of coming to school. Fear of the unknown, just that fearful behavior. We might see more students who are going to be withdrawn. So they're just keeping to themselves. They're not going out on the playground. They're not socializing the way that we used to see them socialize. Their parents might be reporting that they're more isolated. We might see more aggressive behaviors. We might hear students yelling, having those verbal outbursts, being a little bit more verbally aggressive or even physically aggressive, and also having emotional outbursts. So it's really important for us to understand now more than ever that these behaviors do need to be addressed, but they very much may be a result of the trauma that has been experienced over the last year. So with that being the case, what are some concrete things that we can do as educators? What are some actions that we can take? The first thing that we want to do, which is what you are doing right now, you want to emphasize social and emotional learning. Now, I know that this is easier said than done because we have tests and we have metrics and we have all sorts of parameters and things that we have to meet. But from our districts all the way down, we have to prioritize that the social emotional learning and safety of students has to take priority in our classrooms, in our teachings, and us equipping them to express what they're feeling, identifying emotions, those small groups, things like that. We have to emphasize social emotional learning, restorative practices, circles, all sorts of things have to really take precedent to really reset that foundation for students to thrive. Then we want to engage in strategic planning around mental and behavioral health. If your school site does not already do this, we want to get on this right away. Your MTSS team, your teachers, your school sites, your school social workers, your admin, community stakeholders, we want to form those groups where we can engage in that strategic planning. And strategic planning is the process of one, first of all, setting a goal, and then deciding on actions to accomplish that goal. And then you're going to mobilize your resources to bring that goal to fruition. Okay, so we want to engage in strategic planning around mental and behavioral health. It might sound really simple, but I can tell you in a lot of our schools, it's still not happening. We engage in strategic planning around academics and around other things, but we don't do it as much as we need to around social and emotional health. And now that has to be a priority. The strategic planning piece is huge. So we want to advocate for that. We want to identify at-risk students through systematic screening, So if your school does not have a systematic way of just screening students for very general, basic social and emotional concerns, that is going to be something that you are going to want to consider right away. Using a screener, when do we implement those screeners, and how do we utilize the data that we're getting from those screeners? Typically in a school setting, if students are struggling socially and emotionally, we find out after the onset of the behaviors, after the onset of some type of maladaptive behavior or emotion. With a screener in place, we are going to catch students that we typically would not catch. Okay, so we only have until 4:30 today. We could do a whole training about screeners and how that goes. But although I can't take you through every step on how to implement that systematically, what we will be sending you is a manual from SAMHSA. Okay, and the manual is called Ready, Set, Go Review, and it takes you through the process of how to obtain a screener, how to develop a system for the screener, how to use it, and then what to do with the data. It is really good. It's really simple. It's to the point. And I would encourage you to sit down with your team, your NTSS team, go through the material, and then figure out, okay, what are the things that we already have in place here? And then what are the things that we need to employ? What are the resources that we need to employ? And SAMHSA is the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. They are an evidence-based research resource center all around all things mental health and substance abuse. So they are leaders in the field. So you definitely want to make sure that you are doing that, identifying students through the screeners, not just through recommendations. And then the last thing that we want to do is we want to make sure that we are increasing awareness of the importance of the mental health screenings and support. And again, what that looks like at your site can be decided by your site. But as educators, teachers, it doesn't matter what your position is. As educators, we want to advocate for that and make sure that we're knowing that that's important when it comes to identifying the needs of students and creating a system where those needs can be met.
Great. Thank you, Therese. So we're going to move into the strategies now. Therese did an incredible job explaining all the mental health side of it and basically why it is important for us to be doing SEL and to be incorporating different ways of students expressing themselves. And one of those ways is through gratitude, right? And that, I mean, definitely for me personally, that's something that I use often, even just in my mind, just checking in with what I'm grateful for in order to minimize the impact of other, trauma responses or things that I might be experiencing. But this is definitely something that that we can use with everybody. So I believe you have access to this folder. Let me actually put it back in the chat again for anybody who may have come in late. Okay, I think that's it. So this, if you're looking at the slide deck, you can actually scroll over each one of these, and each one is a separate folder. So one has just different writing prompts that you can use. The other one is more of like an actual journal. I think that you can type on, right, Liz?
Yes, I can try to pull it up while you're talking about it.
Okay, great. So each one has like I think the Gratitude Wednesday, the gratitude prompts have like TK through 8th grade, all different prompts. So you can access those, whichever grade level you're working with, and just grab from there. So you don't have to come up with something out of your head every single day or anything like that. You can just grab from this bank. And then with the journals, I believe that one is 2nd through 8th grade, but there's also one for staff, which would be great for all of us to utilize just to keep our own selves, just maintaining that positivity, that feeling of gratitude, because then we're also modeling and passing that on to our students. So it looks like the drive is a little slow right now.
I'm sorry. And we do
Okay.
update these prompts. So as we put new prompts, I can put them on there because I'll go back to our, sorry, I have like a billion.
Tabs open.
Yes.
You are definitely not alone in that. My screen looks the same. No problem. But just know that those links are in that folder, so you should be able to access them whenever you're ready to.
And we also have a lot of our teachers like who teach English, who are using gratitude as part of their, their daily routines where kids actually can go in there and write about it. And our teachers are getting creative even with virtual learning. Like I had one teacher who did a virtual gratitude board, and she did a jam board and all the kids put stickers on what they're grateful for, and then she put her face in front of the gratitude board, and that's her screensaver. So every time she pops open her computer, the kids see all of the things that they're grateful for along with their teacher's face, and they just love that stuff. So some other things that we have is so the virtual circles. If we can do, when you think in terms of tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3, and we're talking about restorative practices, you want to use some of those, effective statements and just those community building circles. You can do those virtually as well. So if you wanted to do some virtual circles, I have on the next link, I'm actually going to be going through some of those and what that looks like. But we do have some virtual circles that you can do. So we have tons of virtual circle prompts that are attached to this presentation. So if you're teachers in the classroom don't want to use an entire morning slide, because we'll be talking about some of those. Maybe they just do gratitude. Maybe they just do the circle openings. We're also including some circles for healing. There's a lot of stuff on healing circles. So we are modifying our circle activities to, to build on those healing circles. So we do have some of that. We have exit tickets. And then obviously I talked about having those activity building those building activities for staff, not just for your kids. So like I put an example right here. We have a virtual self-portrait that teachers use with their kids, and they have to put everything in their house that, really represents them. But our teachers do this as well. So we actually do this in our staff meeting. So you want to be, building those communities with your staff, not just with your kiddos. One of my favorite things, I feel like Oprah, my favorite things, like this is one of my favorite things. We have put a lot of time into these morning meetings. I want to say my whole 2020 year was putting these things together. So I'm actually modifying these morning meetings because we can always make them better. But on the morning meeting slides, I kind of want to just show you what that looks like. So we do have them for every day of the year. I think we started in August of last year, but we do update those. So you will have, if you want to use the morning meeting slides, you will have those that update automatically. So if you want to make a copy of it, your teachers want to modify it, feel free to do it. We do update those, I believe, on the 15th of every month for the following month. So we're going to keep doing that all the way through 2021 and 2022 school year. So it should carry all the way through. So morning meeting slides are one of our, I want to say it's one of our favorites. Because I shared this at an AXA meeting and then at a conference, and I've been getting emails from people in Canada and the UK, and I don't know how this thing got out, but it's like all over Twitter, and people are emailing me all the time. So I guess it was a hit. So now I'm trying to make it a little bit better. So we do have like a poll of the day, and I'm going to change it to more of like a this or that. But this is the morning meeting slide, and I apologize. My internet, I have the best internet according to Spectrum. I have the highest tier, and I pay $100 a month, and I can't get anything to load. So I apologize for that. But here are the morning meeting slides. So like I mentioned, you have your table of contents, so you can go through each month, and it's easier that way than digging through like 400 slides or however many slides we have. But the morning meeting is you greet your kids in the morning. Then you have a little quote of the day. We actually changed that to a word of the day. And then the poll of the day is actually going to be a this or that question. And there's going to be Jamboards that are attached to that. So what I realized with social emotional learning and creating activities for teachers is I've trained teachers on social emotional learning, and I can't just say, this is great, right? Go do it. Like circles, they're bomb, go do it. They're not going to do them if they don't have the resources sometimes. It's not that they're not good educators and they don't want to do it. They do not have the time. So I realize if I don't give you the morning meeting slides, if I don't give you the circle prompts in a slide deck, one for each day, they're just not going to do it. And it's not, has nothing to say about their, them being good teachers or bad teachers. They just can't do it. They don't have the time. So we really have to prep this stuff for them. So the morning meeting slides do have videos, and we try to modify those for grade levels. And then we also have your circle opening. This can also be on this can be a Jamboard activity. So if you want an actual, I want to say we call them SEL lessons. I even have another slide deck that I developed. I don't think I put it on here, but it does have SEL lessons. Like Monday is Mindful Monday. So we do mindfulness, and there's videos for mindfulness. There's Gratitude Wednesday, there's Thoughtful Thursdays, and then there's Fun Fridays. So we do have a slide deck that's similar to morning meetings, but it's a little bit more detailed, and there's more lessons in there. So if you wanted those, you can always contact me. I have my information at the end of our presentation. So we do have some SEL lessons that we've added on there as well. So morning meetings are great. I want to change the name to morning meetings because this can be just a greeting. It could be the way your kids come back from recess. If you're doing in person, it could be how you are opening your group. Maybe you're doing social skills group. It can be a great way for your kids to actually come back, and actually build community with kids within the group. I want to pause for a second because I see like I'm moving really slowly. Can you guys hear everything that I'm saying, or does it sound like I'm a robot? Okay, good. Because it looks so like slow motion.
No, you sound great, Liz.
Like I'm a superhero. Like I'm just slow motion right now. Okay. So I apologize for my internet connection. This is so frustrating. But yeah, so if you're doing groups, when your kid, it's in the morning, some of our administrators actually took the morning meeting slides and they took sections of it. So the section 1 is for the morning. The middle piece is, for transitions when they come back from lunch. And then they have your closing, which is your circle of the day. So you can kind of scatter it throughout the day. Some educators have more time than others to implement some of these resources. Some do not, depending on your administrator. They might give you 25 minutes. What I do want to suggest is one of the things, when it comes to social emotional learning is, so I piloted a lot of programs. I think I mentioned that. I want to say every program that's out there, I've seen it at some point or another. And I was doing a walk when we were piloting SEL, and one of my teachers said, I said, how is it going with the program? And she said, oh, it's great. I do SEL every Tuesday at 9. And I thought, okay, how do I get you to not do SEL at a time slot? And it's something you do all day long. Like, how do we get you to do SEL throughout the day? Even if you don't have a curriculum, you can do SEL. So that's your relationships, your morning greetings, all of that good stuff that you're sharing with your kids. And, if I can impart that in all of our educators' brains, is that you really don't need a curriculum. You kind of are the curriculum. And yes, curriculums work because we use them at our district too. We have Second Step, we have Toolbox, we have everything that you can think of, but at the end of the day, it's really those relationships that we're building. And I am so proud of myself because look at that. I did add the SEL lessons on here. So I'm proud of myself for doing that because I was talking about it and I thought, I don't even have it linked. So that should be on our resources as well, on our folder. So the SEL lessons, it does have an opening circle. The difference between the morning meeting slides and the SEL lessons is that there's Jamboards already attached to it. So the teachers, again, we had these circle questions in our morning meetings and the teacher said, I don't have time to do a Jamboard. And we thought, okay, let's create these Jamboards. So when you click on it, it takes you, you make a copy and then you have the activity. So it does have the Jamboards on there. It also has a caption it. We wanted to make it a little bit more fun. Some of the lessons get a little bit deeper, but kids still need to know each other and they want to laugh. We realize that the great thing about having these when the day starts is that if you can get your kids to be engaged and to talk before a lesson, they're more likely to be engaged during your lesson. And kids don't just want to hear from the adult, they want to hear from each other. So one thing that I always say this, when I was a teacher, I was really good at building relationships with my kids. I liked them, they liked me, we respected each other. I wasn't good at helping them build relationships with each other because I didn't know that then, but I know it now. And if I could go back into the classroom, I would do a better job at building community within each other, because that's where the conflicts were. They were within each other. It was the Mean Girl Club. It was all of these different things. It was not anything towards me. So building community, great thing. So we did add the captioned image. So they actually have the caption, what do you think these dogs are saying? Or, what does this mean to you? And kids get so funny with these. I mean, they're just hilarious. So we did add a caption on there. And then, like I mentioned, we do have every day is something different. So there is Mindful Monday, Thoughtful Thursday. And again, you can make copies of this. You have all rights to go ahead and make copies and modify them as you like. But if you keep the original one, it will update regularly. Again, like I said, all the way to the end of until next year. So you do have that available. I want to stop for a second to see if we have any questions, any comments that we need to address. So I'm going to go back into present mode. Otzi, can you tell us if there's any questions on the chat box before we move on to, I think we have some parent resources.
There are
Yep.
no questions in the chat.
There's just some thank yous in there.
Oh, awesome. You're welcome. My 900 hours of my life that you just witnessed in like the past 2 minutes.
Hey, Liz,
Liz,
I have a question for you.
Uh-huh.
Would you describe, and I'm guessing at the sites that you work at, there's some teachers who embrace this with more relish than others. And I'm wondering if you can talk about like what you've done to increase the likelihood that they'll actually use this stuff in the classroom. What are some of the things that you've done to encourage that?
Good question. So when I'm thinking of like professional development, I feel like I'm the queen of PD, and I have to make sure it covers mastery, identity, creativity, and all those wonderful research-based stuff that's out there. But what I realize is I can't give my teachers something, I don't want to say something new, but something to do without them actually realizing that it's something that's a benefit for them and to their kids. So if you wanted to introduce some of these activities and it's new to your campus, or maybe you have some teachers that just don't want to play with the SEL activities, you want to be, what it comes down to is shifting that belief system. You can't just give them something and think that is going to shift their belief system, or a PD that's going to do that. So shifting that belief system within them where they can trigger a discrepancy in themselves and see the benefit in doing this. So I usually say, we're going to stop doing this behavior by doing this. Like I'm thinking of like when we're doing PBIS, right? I said, if kids are having these behaviors, we're going to teach these lessons so they don't behave this way in the classroom anymore. So one thing that I would probably recommend is if you wanted to do a virtual activity on, here's a good one. So if you were to build the perfect school for your own child, what are the elements that you want at this amazing, wonderful school for your own kid? But you can't have more than 5 items on there. So every person will meet with their group, and together they have to figure out what 5 items they're going to choose. So you're going to have these different schoolhouses, and at least 99%, every time I do these activities, of the items in there are non-academic items. They are things like, I want somebody who respects my child. I want my child to feel like their teacher cares about them. I want them to be respected. So there are all of these like SEL type strategies. And then what we turn that around into saying is, so what we want to do is trigger a discrepancy. Do you build this foundation in your own classroom because you want it for your kids, but do you do it for your own kids? And that's where it triggers a discrepancy, because we're not going to say, if you do SEL, you're great, and if you don't, you suck. We're not saying that. We want them to be able to find it in themselves, to see the benefit and saying, you know what, you're right. Our kids are going to come back with trauma. They are going to come back with anxiety. They have been out of school for all of this time. What would I like for my kids when they go back to school? So your own kids going back to school, what environment do you want them to go into? I want them to, and let your teachers tell you, and then we can say, so do we do that in our classrooms? And if we don't, what are some resources that we can develop? Or, what, here's some stuff. And the teachers will take what they want. We have teachers that use morning meeting slides in our district, but they do not touch the SEL slides, or they touch SEL, but they don't touch morning meeting, or they just do gratitude, but they're doing something and they're not doing all of them. It would be awesome if I could say all 1,600 of our teachers are doing, morning meeting circles, because they're not. Reality is that they're not, but they do use whatever feels comfortable to them. We have some teachers that still don't want to do mindfulness. They just don't want to do it. It's okay. We have a video, Cosmic Kids, press play. They'll do it in their home. So there's a lot of things that we can do and offer them, even something where they don't actually have to do it themselves. So that would be my recommendation. How create an activity that helps, shift that belief system a little bit, help them find a discrepancy in their own teaching practices, and then give them the resources, because then they won't see the why behind it.
Thank you, Liz. We have a question in the chat. So as a math and science sped teacher where SEL is told to be done by the ELA teacher, is this something we can still implement quickly in our lessons?
Yes, absolutely. And it goes back to we only do SEL during advisory. We don't want to do that. So we have our math teachers who do we call them brain breaks. We don't call it mindfulness. We call it brain breaks. And they do brain breaks before they actually do their activities. Or if they are learning a new concept, then she will say, you know what, right now we're going to take a brain break because we just learned something new and we're probably confused. And whenever we're stressed out or we're going to take a test, we're going to do a brain break, which is really like a mindful moment, because we're teaching our kids that before you take a test, that anxiety goes up. So why don't we bring that down a little bit, clear our minds, and then we can move forward to the next task. So yes, you can do a Jamboard activity for the opening circle as part of our SEL. So you can pick from some of these things. You can pick from the morning meeting slides. Even if it takes you just a couple of minutes, I would say the caption it activity, that is a quick, maybe 2-minute activity. The circle activity, same thing, because you're using Jamboard. What we realize with the chat is we can't get to every kid because it takes too long to do it in the classroom, to get all the kids in a circle and share out loud. It takes too long. I don't have 30 minutes. I have 3 minutes. So you can take what you want, but yes, it doesn't matter what you teach. You can infuse either a caption it, a greeting, how we're going to greet each other, your virtual circle, a Jamboard activity, or any of the lessons that we have on there. And we have really good motivational videos that you can even have your kids watch and then just kind of type in the chat box or in the Jamboard, what they think about it or what resonated with them. So yes, absolutely, you can do that. Great question. Do we have any more questions, Otzi?
That was it for now.
Can I just make a quick comment, Liz, to say, and it works. I don't care, math, science, whatever topic we're teaching, when we infuse those quick moments. I love how you said, I don't have 30 minutes, I have 3. When we infuse those quick moments, kids really feel like they have this holistic experience. I'm going in for math, but I got a moment to get my wiggles out, or I got a moment to be mindful, or I got a moment, right? We're not doing therapy with kids. We're giving them a space to bring their emotions into their academic realm. I mean, that's huge. And it improves their performance even in your particular class. So.
And they can do that without a curriculum. I mention it all the time. So think of the restorative questions. What happened? What were you thinking of the time? I had a teacher who was doing a virtual lesson, and it was about, I think it was Martin Luther King. And they were talking about when he had gotten arrested. And then she paused and she said, I want you guys to tell me, what do you think he's thinking right now? What do you think needs to happen to make this right? And all she used was her restorative questions as part of her novel or the story she was reading, and it resonated with kids. I had another teacher who was reading the one and only Ivan, and in the story, Stella dies or Ivan dies, I can't remember, but one of them dies. And then the teacher stopped the lesson and she said, how do you think Ivan feels right now? Because Stella just passed away. So now we're talking about emotions. What do we need to, if Ivan was your friend and he came to school and somebody passed away, what is something you can tell Ivan to make him feel better? Because sadly, some of our kids are going to have friends who are going to lose a loved one sometime during our school year. I mean, during our school days. And what can I say when someone comes and says, oh, I went to my mom's funeral this weekend? Like, what do you say to a child, to a friend who just told you that somebody passed away. So we're using those teachable moments to embed some of that SEL and say, could he, what are some tools that he could use right now? And maybe it's a breathing tool, maybe it's your empathy tool, but you can definitely infuse it with reading, writing, math, PE, with anything. And then we have a great resource as well for parents. This is our behavior management at home that supports virtual learning. So we realized that our behavior specialist in my district said, Liz, we are counseling more parents than we are kids. Our parents are like stressed out. There's kids on the floor, they're having tantrums. And I can easily say, hey, when your child throws a tantrum, here's some de-escalating techniques, right? But ideally, if we can build that environment, build a community, build some supports for your child, they're less likely to have those behaviors. So this, I believe, is also on your folder. So it gives parents some tips on what they can do before, during, and after virtual learning. Because in our district, we're still going to have kids who are in virtual learning, even in the fall, if parents don't feel comfortable sending them to school yet. So our teachers are going to have to be doing a little bit of both. But this is more for the parents, how you can praise them during the lesson. And it's funny because I got with the teachers and I said, what are the biggest concerns that you have during Zoom meetings? And they said there were things with parents. Like we had one kid, like he has so many chickens, the chickens don't stop getting out of the camera. Like they're in the camera all day. Mom, just leave the chickens outside the house during, Zoom meeting because there's always chickens. Or there's the drunk dad in the background on his underwear. I mean, there's just so many different things that we could not control. So we thought, I think our parents need some strategies as well. So we did create this. If you wanted some additional parent PDs, again, please feel free to reach out to me. We have something called Parent University, and we have about 1,000 parents Saturday that show up to these trainings. So we have PDs on parenting during a pandemic, tools for learning, social emotional learning, collaborative problem solving at home. So if you need any PD stuff for parents, let me know and I can shoot you some stuff for free. We don't charge for anything. Everything's free because I steal from everybody anyway. So I'm just giving it back.
Awesome. Thank you, Liz. So let's just have a quick just share out. What stood out from today's session? What will you take back to your teams? You can either throw your answers in the chat, or we'd love to hear from you verbally if you're open for that.
The resources were really helpful. I'm looking forward to taking them back.
Excellent. Great. Thank you.
Agreed. I left a staff meeting this morning being charged with creating like 10 to 15 SEL lessons for our first week back on campus. So you literally answered a prayer.
That's awesome.
So every time I just got tasked with, I mean, we've been doing advisory stuff and working on stuff. So I have a bank of resources, but the way it's laid out, and I think visually, it's really helpful in planning to see something already visually laid out in that slide deck like that. So it could be I could be a total thief or plug and chug and cater it to grade level. So I'm really, really appreciative.
Excellent. Good to hear that, Jessica. Great. And there's a lot of feedback in the chat as well. Just loving the ideas. A lot of thank yous. Morning meeting resources are great. There's definitely a lot in there.
I wanted to share this because there's so many things and I can't fit all of them in 90 minutes, but I will drop this one into the folder as well. This is virtual supports for classroom management. So when you're thinking tier 1, which to me is all classroom management, well, not just all classroom management, I mean in the classroom, aside from, the banners and everything you have posted outside of your classroom. But it goes into, what I did is I had to pivot. How do I use everything that we currently have into a virtual setting? And the same with behavior. So I went all the way down to tier 2 because we have kids who are, having behaviors. They're rolling on their bed. They don't want to get on the camera, and the teachers were struggling with that. So if you wanted additional resources, these are all virtual. So we have 8 areas of effective classroom management, which is building relationships, procedures, and routines. So it does have all of the resources are virtual. And the beauty of this is they were created by teachers for teachers. I can't take credit for all of this because our amazing teachers, I was like, oh, I'm going to steal that. So we have like virtual expectations, Zoom expectations, Zoom breakout room expectations, and then we go into tier 2 that also has, so again, we have a lot of behavior specialists in our district, and they are getting called to go into these classrooms and say, hey, look at this behavior, tell me what to do with it. And our behaviorists were coming and saying, hey, these are the behaviors we're exhibiting. So we talked about individual like classroom rewards, classroom incentives. So there's a lot of really good stuff in here, and I'll throw this one, like I said, into our folder, because I want to say all of my favorite things are in this document as well. But most of it created by teachers, or I found something on teachers, pay teachers, and I had to create my own because I don't want to pay for it, or I don't have the license for it. So I just kind of recreated it. But we do have some like virtual incentives that they can use with their kids. A lot of our, like one of our teachers said, well, I use a marble jar and I can't use that virtually. I said, yes, you can. So we created a virtual marble jar where the kids can actually, they can gain their little marbles when they're in the classroom. And then when they get X amount of marbles, and they can, get a prize in the classroom or something like that. So I will share that on there. And I want to say we also have an SEL webpage for our district, and everything that we create goes into that page. So I'll make sure that I link that page to the folder as well. So if you needed additional resources, all of our training material is on there. So I'll make sure that I put that in there. So if anything new comes out, it'll be on that website, and you guys can always follow it. And again, you don't have to request access on any of that material. Everything is free. We just put it out there for the public. So I'll make sure that I link our website on there as well.
And just as a reminder, you all, for the Ready, Set, Go review for those universal screeners, that's also in that amazing resource folder as well. And again, it's not complicated, and it's not for specialists. It's not for counselors and social workers. It's for anyone who wants to build a systemic way of screening students, that we don't have to pinpoint students or see problems. It's just a regular part of our practice.
Is there an additional resource that you feel that you need that maybe we didn't cover, because maybe we haven't and we just didn't share it? So if there's anything you were hoping to get out of today that maybe you didn't, please let us know, because we might have something and we just didn't put it in.
Lori is asking which folder has the slide deck with the individual virtual incentives.
That is the one I'm about to put right now, because I didn't link it in there. I just thought about it as we were talking. I was like, oh, wait, I have something for that. I have something for that. So I'm gonna drop that into our folder right now. The one that I just shared, it has links on the right-hand side for each section. So we actually did this for administrators, and it just kind of morphed into something else, because admin was going into these Zoom rooms and they're like, I don't even know what to tell them how to, like, they're not doing A, but I don't know how to have them do A, because I don't even know how to do A. Like, what does this look like? And I was like, I have no idea. So I actually had to jump into a bunch of classrooms and get these ideas and say, okay, so if they are not acknowledging kids, here's some resources for that. If they're not building relationships, here's some resources for that. So it was really more for administrators to kind of support teachers. But then the teacher said, this is really good stuff. Where did you get it? And I thought, why don't we just give it to all the teachers? Like, why is this just for administrators? So we actually made it for all teachers. And then they started sharing stuff. I said, if you have something amazing, give it to me. And that's kind of where this kind of just morphed into. But I will put this into that folder right now. Do we have any other questions, Auntie, that we need to answer? Any additional resources that they might need that maybe we didn't put?
Let's see. Do you have suggestions for a hybrid return to school where some of them are learning online and some are in person?
Good question. So hold on, let me take out my phone, because I don't want to forget to link all of this stuff on there. So I am linking the virtual classroom management, and I was going to link something else. Can you remind me what that was, Atsi? I can't remember. It was another resource. Virtual classroom management.
And the virtual jar, was that it? The one you were?
So we have Yes, I have something that I can throw in there for that. So we develop what we used to call the first 3 days. So when kids come back, I don't want to say we don't do any academics, but it's all building relationships when kids come back. So we developed this beautiful document that was created by teachers, full of activities on what do we do the first 3 days. Activities like what I wish my teacher knew, all about me, and then it has some mindfulness stuff in there. But now with virtual learning, we had to pivot a little bit. So we have created, I don't want to call it the first 3 days. I call it the return to school connection, because I feel like the first 3 days is you only build relationships for 3 days and then you're done. And that's not what I'm trying to put out there. So it's called the return to school connection document. And that one, actually, I was just working on it. So I can link that on the folder as well. So these are activities just for kids who are coming back to school, because our kids come back on April 14th or April, somewhere around there. So we needed some resources for our teachers to build those communities when the kids come back. So aside from everything that you're seeing here, we do have in-person activities. It also includes health and safety procedures. It talks about germs and all that other stuff. So it does have like week 1, week 2, week 3, and it's links to either brain breaks. We have circles for healing. And then we also have the community building activities. So you can build community with these activities, or you can do circle healing, healing circle activities, or you can do some of the brain breaks, and that's some mindfulness. So we do have in-person activities, and then we have the ones for virtual. So these are for kids who are coming in person, but we also have virtual activities that we used to call the first 3 days. I just wouldn't call it the first 3 days, but those are really great as well. Like there's some, like we have like a locker that kids have to design, and then we have build your own hydro flask, and you're putting stickers of everything that you like. So there's a lot of really good virtual activities that teachers can use to get to know their kids. And they are phenomenal, because we have a teacher who wrote down, I'll give you an example. He wrote down one thing that each kid liked, and every time he takes attendance, he mentions that one thing that they like, just so he knows that he actually cares about them and what they had to say. And during their All About Me, like I think 80% of his kids say they like Starbucks. So he uses his Starbucks cup when he's presenting in the morning. Or if they're fans of a particular team, he'll wear a jersey, but he does everything to kind of connect with his kids based on those All About Me activities. So I'll make sure that I do drop in the virtual and the in-person activities for you guys as well.
All right, any other questions or thoughts? Anything anybody wants to share?
Well, I know I'm a little biased, but I just want to say thank you. This was great. I mean, all these resources. I want to go back into the classroom. So thank you, Liz. Thank you, Ozzy.
Yes,
Thank you, Therese.
Thank you.
And what we'll do, we'll stick around. If anybody has any particular question that just pertains to their school or their classroom, and maybe you didn't just want to say it out in the big group, feel free to hang out with us. If you have any particular questions or concerns or want additional resources on something, we will stick around for those of you who have some more questions on how to address some of this social emotional learning when kids come back. But other than that, thank you. You all look great. Thank you for turning on your cameras. Thank you for participating. So we appreciate your time.
Quick question, Liz, is the recording going out to everybody as well?
Good question. I am not sure, but we can find out. We can ask. I'm pretty sure. I mean, they're recorded for a reason, right? So I'm pretty sure that they can share that. So we can get with Jessica,
Okay.
who did the webinar, and we can find out. I don't have the answer right now, though, but we can find out.
No problem. That was an ask. Thank you, everybody, for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Therese, for your answers. I really appreciate them.
Oh, yes, no problem. Keep going, Sophia. You sound amazing.
I did have a quick follow-up question.
Go for it.
Excuse me. So in our district, I have 2 sites. I support 2 middle schools as a social worker. And we really focused on anti-racism lessons for advisory this year and working with teachers. And so a lot of my support came around supporting staff and, you know, facilitating circles and having difficult conversations. And that's not going anywhere. And so I think we've kind of had these